Hi guys, Jane here, and today I am reviewing the book Autoboyography by Christina Lauren. And that is actually a pen name for two people who are writing the book together. So, Autobiography is about this guy named Tanner, and he is originally from California, but he moved to Utah with his family. And he is bisexual. And now he's in a Mormon community, and he's been told by his parents, it's be really careful who you tell. Mormons are not known for being really open about people who are gay. There's some issues with the church and people who are gay. So, of course, Tanner's kind of keeping it to himself and trying to adjust to his school. Like, since he is bisexual, it's not as huge a deal, I think, because he can date girls. And his friend Autumn is completely in love with him. But he takes this class, she convinced him to take this class in writing. And the teacher's assistant is this really cute guy named Sebastian. And Tanner develops a crush on Sebastian and then realizes later that Sebastian also likes boys. And so they kind of get together. But the issue is that Sebastian is not only Mormon, but also the bishop's son. And if you're not familiar with Mormon culture, a bishop is kind of like a pastor of a church. They're not a paid minister, but they are like on a local level who's in charge of a specific church. So, I mean, it's pretty significant involvement there. I have to say, I loved this book. For me, it is a 5 out of 5 and probably the best book I have read this year. But a lot of that, I think, has to do with my background. So I'm going to be kind of revealing a lot of myself when I talk about this story. And also saying that, I'm not sure if I had a different background, if it would have been quite as amazing for me, but I could just so relate. So some of the stuff that this book did really, really well. I loved that the Mormons were portrayed very, very accurately. I was raised Mormon, and so much of the stuff I was just like laughing at. Also, there is, like, in a good way, like, it was just spot on. Stuff that people don't really know about sometimes or don't really catch. Like, I would have sworn one of the writers was Mormon. I kind of don't think they are after, like, doing some research into them, but I could be wrong. But, I mean, they hit the culture spot on. Another thing that was done really well is the humor. This book is told from Tanner's perspective mostly. There's parts that are told from Sebastian's perspective, which is a little bit confusing at times, but mostly it's really, really funny and cute. And I loved the early, like, young love and, kind of that first real love type. It's so emotional, and it just took me back to my high school days and all the intensity of, your first love. It was just, so good. So, so good. So, if you are Mormon, you may not enjoy this book. If you don't know much about Mormon culture, I think Tanner does a pretty good job of explaining things, but the book may not be as amazing if you're not real familiar with Mormon culture. But oh my gosh, especially if you were formerly Mormon, this is a hilarious, wonderful book, and I just loved it. So I'm going to go now into the spoiler part of the reviews and a little bit more in depth. So if this is something you don't want spoiled, I would go ahead and click off now. Also, if you don't want to hear anything about my past in my life, probably a good time to click off. So I was raised Mormon, and one of the complications with Mormonism is they are really, really strict, and they really expect you to follow the rules really closely. And I loved that Sebastian in this book, he struggled with that so much. Like, if I admit that I'm gay, because through this whole book he has the worst time admitting he's gay, and he kind of is like, well, I'm not really gay, I'm just, attracted to a guy. And, he doesn't want to admit that he is, because that would mean giving up so much. And he struggles so much through this book. He breaks up with Tanner like multiple times because of it. And that is such a typical struggle for those leaving the Mormon community. And it was one that I had. When I was 16 or 17, like late 16, early 17, I told my parents I didn't want to be part of the church anymore. And my parents were like, okay, when you're 18, you need to leave the house. So at 18, halfway through my senior year, I kind of got kicked out. Like, it wasn't forcible, it wasn't like, get out. But it was definitely like, we don't want you to live here because, your ideas might upset or might like threaten the faith of your brother and sister. And so basically, I got sent out on my own at 18 because I didn't want to go to church with them anymore. And because I was making some lifestyle decisions, mostly being intimate with my boyfriend, that they didn't approve of. But they didn't want me living in the house anymore. Additionally, like, once they did kick me out, it was getting close to the holidays, and there was like, well, we don't think we're gonna let you come home for Christmas because Christmas, is about Jesus. But if we'd have had like typical holiday struggle or like celebrations, I get that, but we didn't. It was very like Santa Claus came and there were stockings and the tree. And I mean, yeah, they read the nativity scene or nativity story from the Bible, but that was about it. It wasn't like it was a really, really Christ focused holiday. So I remember being so hurt that I was being told basically initially that I wasn't going to be allowed to come home for Christmas, that I wasn't going to be able to participate because, Christmas is about Jesus. Ultimately, my parents did relent on that, and I was allowed to continue celebrating the holidays with my family. But, just so much that happens to Sebastian was like so close to my own story that I was just, oh my gosh. So I really loved that. Tanner's parents, on the other hand, like Sebastian's obviously are not supportive at all, but Tanner's parents are so great. And they're the kind of parents like I wish all parents were when their kids came out bisexual or gay. Like they're the kind of parents I hope to be like, all supportive and all I just loved how supportive and wonderful his parents were, even though like his father especially had been raised Jewish, and so it was a little hard for him. But, he still was supportive all the way. And I'd actually read some reviews of this book where people said they didn't feel like the parents were supportive, but I'm not really sure why they felt that way because I loved the parents. Like, especially Tanner's dad. He is so great. Like, he catches Tanner and Sebastian making out at one point. And, he quickly leaves the room and stuff like that. But when him and Tanner talk about it, it's not it's not like, I don't want to see that kind of stuff. It's like, hey, you can't be sneaking around here with Sebastian because his parents don't know, and that, we don't want the lying and being part of like not telling the truth to somebody's parents because that's disrespectful. But we would say that even if it was a girl. So I really loved his parents, and I thought they were super supportive, even though they also were not like, oh yeah, you can sneak around and stuff. And they were wary. They were like, hey, this is going to be a bad situation if you're not careful and if you fall too deep because, Tanner's a Mormon and he's the bishop's son. And his mom had been raised Mormon, so she knew what there was to lose and the complexities of leaving the Mormon church. So I really, really, really loved that. I thought that was so well done. I was so glad that she had that knowledge as a character and the background that she did because it really helped Tanner to kind of understand things, and it gave the narrator a way to show things about the Mormon culture that I think would have been hard to show otherwise. Like, we do at the very end like get pictures into Sebastian's world, but it's much lighter than Tanner's. It's not like we're following it the whole way. There were some things that I think maybe weren't as well explained. Like I said, I read reviews of the book, and people felt like Tanner's friendships were very, very shallow. And I kind of agree. Some of his guy friends you don't really see very much about. He has this one friend who like figured out that he was gay, but they haven't really had any interactions. And I know in some of the reviews I read, people were complaining about that, but I really felt like it is Tanner's story. And he's in love with his boyfriend. he's not thinking so much about his friends. And I know when I first started having a serious relationship, I wasn't hanging out with my friends as much either. And especially since he has to hide his relationship because his friends don't know he's gay. One of his friends he like comes out to later in the book, but initially he doesn't, nobody knows. So it's not like he can gush to his friends about it. He's got this huge secret. So I didn't have a problem with that, but maybe it could have been a little more developed, him and his friendships other than Autumn. Um, Another thing that some people complained about, but that I didn't really think, like, I got it. I didn't think it was a problem with the book, was Tanner ends up, after him and Sebastian break up, he ends up having sex with Autumn, his female friend, who is just in love with him. And it's a mistake. And he realizes, like, right away that it's a mistake and that he was just hurting and that he kind of took advantage, but not really because she kind of wanted it because she liked him. But, you know, when you're young and you've got so many emotions, things can happen like that. And, you know, relationships are complicated. And I just remember it just took me back to my teenage years so much, I think is what I loved about this book. So not only did I totally relate, but it took me back to my teenage years. And also, and I think I forgot to mention this, so Sebastian is a writer, and I'm a writer, so, you know, more things we have in common. But Sebastian's a writer, and Tanner in this story is in a creative writing class, basically. And so that's why he's writing this story, and like through the whole thing, he's trying to not tell anybody that he's gay, but he's writing a story about a guy having a crush on another guy in class. Like he's writing the autoboyography story. Like I think you're supposed to get the impression he's writing the book that you read, but it's not, doesn't quite work that way, but I think you're supposed to think that. But yeah, it was just, oh my gosh, just so good. So definitely, I highly recommend reading it. I really enjoyed it. It was pretty amazing. And I cannot say enough good about this book. It touched me just so relatable, so my own experience on the page. And all of the things about being young and first love and the complications of being with somebody who isn't maybe a good match for you for whatever reason, whether it's, you know, socioeconomical, you know, your family does not support it. And like obviously with the sexuality thing, it's a lot more intense, but there are other people who have issues too with bringing home somebody or wanting to be with somebody who their family doesn't approve of, to the point that the family's like, if you're with that person, we don't want anything to do with you. You cannot have a relationship with your family and be in the relationship with the person that you're in. And that's kind of how I felt like Sebastian's family more or less was. Like, you know, you can't be gay because being gay and acting, well, and they're really cool about this in the book too. The church's stance is that you can be gay and have feelings, but you can't act on them. So like Sebastian, as long as he's just having feelings, but if he's happy to go and marry a girl and live a good Mormon life, like they can get over the fact he's gay, it's fine. But as soon as you act on those feelings or you refuse to get married, you can't just, in the Mormon church, you can't just be celibate. You can't just be like, okay, I'm gay, but I know that's a sin, so I'm not going to act on it. I'll just, you know, live my life as a single person. You really can't be single and be Mormon. Like, marriage is really important. Like, you can't exactly go to heaven. The highest heaven that Mormons have, because they have like degrees of heaven, it's not like heaven, hell. So you can't really get to the highest degree of heaven unless you are married to if you're a boy, to a girl. So, you know, he not only can't just be like, okay, I have these feelings, so I'm just going to be celibate and not act on them, but I have to go and get married to a girl and be against my nature in order to be accepted by my parents. And yeah, just, it's a complicated situation. And my heart broke for Tanner and Sebastian. And you just, yeah, if this book sounds good to you, it was amazing. I loved it. Best book of the year for me. All right, guys, if you have read this book, I would love to hear what you thought about it. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you like more content, please subscribe. Thanks, guys. Bye.